The rhythmic pulse of sonar equipment filled the bridge of the research vessel Nautilus as Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the readings with growing bewilderment. For 3 weeks, they had been tracking an anomalous signal from the depths of the Mariana Trench, but what they found defied explanation. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," Marcus Rodriguez, her chief engineer, called from the monitoring station. His dark eyes were wide with excitement as he pointed to a 3-dimensional rendering slowly taking shape on his holographic display. "The signal's not coming from the seafloor. It's coming from inside the geological formation." Sarah leaned over his shoulder, her heart racing as the image resolved into sharper focus. What they had initially dismissed as a natural underwater mountain was revealing itself to be something else entirely. Beneath layers of sediment and coral growth, perfectly straight lines and geometric patterns emerged. "How large is it?" she whispered, though she could already see the scale markers on the display. "Nearly 4 kilometers long," Marcus replied, his voice trembling slightly. "And it's generating more power than a nuclear aircraft carrier, but in a way we've never seen before. The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database." Sarah straightened up, her mind racing. As the head of the UN Deep Ocean Research Initiative, she had seen her share of surprising discoveries, but nothing like this. She reached for the secure communication terminal, knowing that within hours, this quiet research mission would become the center of global attention. "Get me Admiral Hayes at Pacific Command," she ordered the communications officer. Priority 1. Within 48 hours, the site transformed into an international operation. Research vessels from a dozen nations converged on their coordinates, while military ships maintained a protective perimeter. Under the waves, remote-operated vehicles probed the mysterious structure with increasingly sophisticated scanning equipment. Sarah stood in the newly established command center aboard the Nautilus, surrounded by screens showing live feeds from the ROVs. Admiral Hayes, a stern-faced woman with graying hair, studied the latest data alongside her. "Look at the material composition." Sarah pointed to one of the readouts. "It's some kind of metal-ceramic composite, but the molecular structure, it's like nothing we've ever manufactured. And these patterns, they're not random growth. They're following the same mathematical sequence over and over. A sequence we've seen before," Marcus added, pulling up another display. "It matches the signal pattern we detected 3 weeks ago. Whatever this thing is, it's been broadcasting its own blueprint." The Admiral's expression remained carefully neutral, but Sarah could see the tension in her shoulders. "Your preliminary report suggested this structure is artificial. Are you saying it's not of human origin?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm saying it's not of modern human origin. The dating puts it at roughly 50,000 years old, but the technology, it's centuries beyond our current capabilities. Someone built this before the last ice age, Admiral. Someone human, or at least someone who thought like us." A sudden alarm cut through the air. On the main screen, one of the ROVs showed a section of the structure beginning to shimmer with a soft blue light. Patterns that had laid dormant for millennia were coming alive. "All vessels, maintain position," Admiral Hayes barked into her comm unit. "No one approaches without." Her words were cut off by a deep resonance that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The ocean itself appeared to vibrate as the ancient structure awakened. Every screen in the command center flickered and then displayed the same message in pristine characters. "Heritage protocol initiated. Genetic markers confirmed. Greetings, children of the Stellar Republic. Your inheritance awaits." Sarah stared at the words, a chill running down her spine, despite the warmth of the command center. Humanity had just discovered it wasn't just reaching for the stars, it was coming home to them. The next 72 hours became a blur of activity. Military vessels from every major nation maintained their uneasy cooperation as teams of scientists worked around the clock to understand what they had found. The structure continued its awakening sequence, sections lighting up in a carefully orchestrated pattern that seemed to be drawing power from the ocean itself. "The energy readings are off the charts," Marcus reported, his voice hoarse from too many hours without sleep. But it's not just generating power, it's reshaping itself at the molecular level. The entire structure is composed of programmable matter. Sarah watched as another section of the ancient vessel revealed itself, layers of accumulated sediment sliding away, as if being gently brushed aside by invisible hands. It's preparing itself, she realized. But for what? The answer came on the fourth day. As the first rays of dawn touched the Pacific, the ocean began to churn. Warning klaxons sounded across every vessel as the water around them started to glow with an ethereal blue light. The structure that had lain dormant for 50,000 years was rising. Sarah stood on the deck of the Nautilus, watching in awe as a mountain of gleaming metal broke the surface. Water cascaded from its hull in silver sheets, revealing intricate patterns that pulsed with internal light. It rose higher and higher, until it towered above the assembled ships like a city turned vertical. The same resonant voice that had greeted them now filled the air, heard not just through speakers but seemingly in their minds. Primary systems online, hull integrity at optimal levels. The stellar forge awakens to serve humanity once more. There is much to prepare, and little time. The Devourers approach. As if to punctuate these ominous words, a massive doorway began to open in the side of the structure, revealing a brightly lit interior that beckoned to them. Sarah looked at Admiral Hayes, who nodded grimly. Whatever they had awakened, whatever legacy this was from humanity's forgotten past, they were committed now. "Prepare a team," the Admiral ordered. "Dr. Chen, you'll lead the first expedition inside. Whatever this stellar forge is, whatever these Devourers might be, we need answers." Sarah nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. Humanity had just taken its first step into a much larger universe, and she had a feeling they were about to learn that their species' history was far grander and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The interior of the stellar forge defied everything Sarah thought she knew about architecture. Corridors shifted and reshaped themselves as they walked, the walls flowing like liquid metal while maintaining perfect structural integrity. Their team of 12, a mixture of scientists, engineers, and military personnel, moved cautiously through the self-illuminating passages, each step revealing new wonders. The air composition is perfectly calibrated for human breathing, Lieutenant Maya Patel reported, checking her instruments. Temperature, humidity, even the trace elements, it's all optimized for human physiology. This wasn't just built by humans, it was built for humans. Commander David Torres, the military lead for their expedition, kept his hand near his sidearm despite the seemingly benign environment. "That's what concerns me. 50,000 years is a long time for something to maintain these conditions. What's been keeping it running all this time?" The answer came from everywhere and nowhere. The same resonant voice they had heard before, but now with a more focused presence. "I have, Commander Torres. I am the custodian, the artificial intelligence tasked with maintaining the stellar forge until humanity was ready to reclaim it." The team stopped, instinctively forming a defensive circle before realizing there was nothing physical to defend against. Sarah stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. "You've been conscious all this time." In a manner of speaking, the custodian replied. A holographic interface materialized before them, showing a complex network of flowing energy patterns. "I maintained minimal awareness while monitoring human development. When your civilization reached sufficient technological advancement to detect my signal, I began the awakening sequence." The hologram shifted, showing images that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. She saw cities that seemed to be made of crystal and light, vessels that dwarfed their ancient structures sailing between the stars, and humans dressed in garments that seemed to be made of pure energy. "This was the Stellar Republic," the custodian explained. "Your ancestors. They achieved mastery over matter, energy, and the fundamental forces of the universe itself. The Stellar Forge was one of their greatest achievements, a factory capable of creating or reshaping celestial bodies." Commander Torres stepped forward, his military training warring with his awe. If they were so advanced, why did they leave? Why abandon Earth and leave all this behind? The hologram darkened, showing massive shapes moving between the stars, things that seemed to devour light itself. Because they detected the approach of the Devourers, a force that consumes civilizations, breaking down all advanced technology and organic life into its constituent parts. Your ancestors had two choices: stand and fight a war they might not win, or hide their legacy where it could be protected until humanity evolved again. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. The Ice Age, the genetic bottleneck in human evolution. It wasn't natural, was it? No, the custodian confirmed. Your ancestors used the stellar forge one last time before they fled. They reshaped Earth's climate and modified their own descendants, you, to survive in a more primitive state. They seeded the planet with carefully designed ruins and myths, breadcrumbs that would help guide humanity's redevelopment along a path that would eventually lead you back here. Maya's instruments suddenly began beeping urgently. Energy spike in all readings. Something's happening. The walls around them pulsed with increasing brightness. Throughout the structure, long dormant systems were coming fully online. The custodian's voice took on a new urgency. The stellar forge is completing its activation sequence, but we have a problem. The Devourers. They're no longer a distant threat. I've detected their signal at the edge of your solar system. How long do we have? Commander Torres demanded. At their current velocity, 3 months, perhaps 4. They've detected the forge's awakening. Earth is now a target. Sarah stepped closer to the holographic interface. Then teach us. Show us how to use this technology, how to defend ourselves. It's not that simple, the custodian warned. The stellar forge requires operators, humans who can interface directly with its systems. The neural pathways, the genetic markers, they're still there in your DNA, but awakening them will change you. You'll become something closer to your ancestors, but the process cannot be reversed. Commander Torres activated his comm unit. Admiral Hayes needs to hear this. All of Earth's governments need to hear this. Agreed, the custodian said, but we must act quickly. The forge's systems are designed to work with human consciousness. The more humans who interface with it, the more powerful it becomes. We need volunteers, the best minds Earth has to offer, and we need them now. Sarah looked at her team members, seeing the same mix of fear and determination in their eyes that she felt herself. I volunteer, she said firmly, whatever it takes to protect Earth. The custodian's response held a note of what might have been pride. Then let us begin. The legacy of the Stellar Republic awakens in you first, Dr. Chen. Through you, humanity will remember what it once was, and what it must become again. The walls of the chamber shifted, revealing a circular platform surrounded by floating rings of light. As Sarah stepped onto it, she felt a tingling sensation throughout her body. The very air seemed to come alive with possibility. Neural interface initiating, the custodian announced, preparing for genetic reactivation. Dr. Chen, are you ready to receive the knowledge of your ancestors? Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that whatever happened next would change not just her, but the course of human history. I'm ready. The reins of light began to spin, and Sarah Chen became the first human in 50,000 years to truly awaken to her species' full potential. The real question was, would it be enough to save Earth from what was coming? Sarah floated in an ocean of starlight. Her consciousness expanded beyond anything she had ever imagined. The genetic reactivation had transformed her awareness, connecting her directly to the Stellar Forge's vast networks of information and control systems. Through her enhanced senses, she could feel the massive structure humming with power, its systems responding to her thoughts like extensions of her own body. Neural integration at 97%. The custodian's voice echoed through her expanded consciousness. Your adaptation rate exceeds all predicted models, Dr. Chen. She opened her eyes, watching in fascination as streams of data flowed through the air around her, in patterns she could now read as easily as English. 2 weeks had passed since her transformation, and in that time, the Stellar Forge had become a hub of feverish activity. More volunteers had come forward, brilliant minds from every nation, each undergoing the same awakening process she had experienced. The Chinese delegation has arrived, Commander Torres reported as he entered the central control chamber. They're top quantum physicists and aerospace engineers. The Russians and Europeans are right behind them. Sarah nodded, her enhanced perception allowing her to sense the new arrivals even through the massive structure's walls. How are they handling the political implications? Better than expected. Nothing unites humanity quite like an existential threat. Torres managed a grim smile. Though there are still plenty arguing over who gets access to what technology and in what order. They don't understand yet, Sarah replied, manipulating the holographic displays with graceful gestures. The Stellar Forge's technology isn't meant to be divided or hoarded. It's meant to work as one system, just like we need to work as one people. The chamber's doors opened again, admitting Dr. Yuki Tanaka, one of the physicists to undergo the awakening. Her eyes now held the same subtle glow as Sarah's, marking her as one of the transformed. "You need to see this," she said without preamble. The deep space arrays just picked up something new about the Devourers. The chamber's holographic system activated, showing a three-dimensional map of the solar system. Red markers indicated the approaching threat, but now there was something different about their formation. They're accelerating, Sarah realized, reading the complex data streams, and splitting into smaller groups. They're adapting their strategy, the custodian confirmed. They recognize the Forge's energy signature. These are not mindless consumers. They are intelligent hunters, and they remember their ancient prey. Torres studied the tactical display with growing concern. How long? 2 months now, instead of 3, Yuki answered. They'll reach the outer planets within 6 weeks. Sarah expanded the hologram, focusing on the Forge's internal systems. Then we need to accelerate our plans. How many awakened operators do we have now? 43, Torres reported, with another 60 candidates being evaluated. But it takes time to adapt to the neural interface. You and Dr. Tanaka are exceptional cases. We don't have time for standard protocols anymore, Sarah decided. Custodian, show them what I'm seeing. The hologram shifted, revealing the Forge's true nature. What had appeared to be a single massive structure was actually a complex network of interconnected systems designed to break apart and reconfigure into something far more powerful. The Stellar Forge isn't just a factory, Sarah explained. It's a seed. When fully activated, it can transform itself into a defensive network capable of protecting the entire solar system. But it needs more than 43 operators. It needs hundreds, all working in perfect synchronization. The genetic markers are present in roughly 1 in 10,000 humans, the custodian added. We have identified sufficient candidates. The question is whether they can be prepared in time, and whether they can handle the transformation, Yuki added quietly. Not everyone adapts as well as we did. Lieutenant Raman's mind nearly broke under the neural load yesterday. Sarah felt the weight of command settling onto her shoulders. As the first to awaken, she had become the de facto leader of this unprecedented project. We need to find a way to stabilize the transformation process. There must be something in the Forge's database about how our ancestors handled this. She dove deeper into the data streams, her enhanced mind sifting through millennia of accumulated knowledge. The others watched as she worked, her hands dancing through the holographic interfaces at impossible speeds. There, she announced after several minutes of intense concentration. The original genetic reactivation protocols were designed for a gradual awakening over generations. We're trying to force a process that should take centuries into a matter of days. But if we modify the neural interface, her hands blurred as she made adjustments to the system's core parameters. Custodian, run a simulation of these changes. The eye was silent for a moment as it processed the modifications. Remarkable. This would reduce neural shock by 60% while maintaining most of the enhancement benefits. Dr. Chen, you've essentially recreated work that took your ancestors decades to perfect. Not recreated, Sarah corrected. Adapted. We're not trying to rebuild the Stellar Republic. We're creating something new, a fusion of what humanity was and what we've become. Torres nodded slowly. I'll inform Admiral Hayes and the other military commanders. If this works, how many operators can we safely transform? With these modifications, at least 300 within the next month. Enough to begin the Forge's transformation sequence. And the risks? Yuki asked quietly. Sarah met her colleague's enhanced eyes. Still high, but lower than the risk of facing the Devourers unprepared. The chamber filled with a subtle vibration as another group of candidates arrived for evaluation. Sarah could sense their mix of fear and determination, their desire to protect Earth warring with their natural apprehension about such a radical transformation. Begin the briefings, she ordered. Make sure they understand exactly what they're volunteering for. And Torres, tell them what we're fighting for. Not just survival, but the chance to become something greater than we ever imagined. As the others left to carry out her instructions, Sarah turned back to the tactical display. The red markers of the approaching Devourers seemed to pulse with malevolent purpose. Humanity had 2 months to master technology it had forgotten 50,000 years ago. The odds were impossible. But then, she thought with a fierce smile, humanity had always been good at beating impossible odds. The Stellar Forge's central command sphere pulsed with ethereal light as 300 awakened operators worked in perfect synchronization. Their enhanced minds merged with the ancient systems, preparing for the transformation that would turn the massive structure into humanity's first line of defense against the approaching Devourers. Sarah Chen's consciousness flowed through the neural network, monitoring the status of each operator. The past month had been a crucible of accelerated evolution, pushing human potential to its absolute limits. Not everyone had survived the process, but those who did had emerged as something new, a bridge between humanity's past and future. Jupiter observation stations have gone dark, Commander Torres reported, his voice cutting through the humming energy of the command sphere. The Devourers are moving faster than anticipated. Sarah pulled her awareness back to her physical form, the golden light fading from her eyes. Show me. The holographic display expanded, revealing the outer solar system. Where Jupiter's orbital path should have been visible, there was now a spreading void, a darkness that seemed to drink in light itself. The Devourers had arrived. They're not just consuming the stations, Dr. Tanaka observed, her enhanced senses analyzing the data streams. They're breaking down the very fabric of space-time around them. This is technology far beyond what the custodian warned us about. They have evolved as well, the AI confirmed. 50,000 years of consuming civilizations has made them stronger. The defensive strategies used by the Stellar Republic may not be sufficient. Sarah felt fear ripple through the neural network, not panic, but a cold recognition of just how dire their situation had become. She reached out, steadying the unified consciousness of the operators with her own determined resolve. Then we'll have to do something they won't expect, she declared. Custodian, show me the Forge's original specifications, not the defensive protocols. I want to see its primary function. The holographic display shifted, revealing complex schematics that only enhanced minds could comprehend. The Stellar Forge had been built to reshape celestial bodies, to transmute the very elements of stars and planets. Dr. Chen, Torres started, recognizing the look in her eyes. Whatever you're thinking. We can't match their level of technological advancement. Sarah cut him off. But we can change the battlefield itself. The Forge doesn't just build things. It breaks them down and reconstructs them. What if we turned that power against the space between stars? Understanding dawned in Yuki's enhanced eyes. You want to weaponize space-time itself. Not exactly. Sarah's hands danced through the holographic controls, her consciousness reaching deep into the Forge's systems. I want to restore it. The devourers consume by breaking down the fundamental forces of the universe. But the forge can repair those breaks, seal them off. If we can trap them in a bubble of stabilized spacetime, the energy requirements would be astronomical. The custodian warned. Even with 300 operators, channeling that much power could burn out the neural network, and your minds with it. Then we'll need to be smart about it. Sarah expanded her consciousness, addressing all the operators simultaneously through the neural link. Everyone, I need your brightest ideas. We have 12 hours before they reach Mars. Let's rewrite the rules of engagement. What followed was perhaps the most extraordinary brainstorming session in human history. 300 enhanced minds worked as one, pulling from both their modern scientific knowledge and the awakened memories of their ancestors. Ideas flowed like lightning, each one building on the last. Commander Torres watched in amazement as the holographic displays filled with increasingly complex calculations and designs. Even if this works, we'll only get one shot at it. The power drain would leave us defenseless if we miss. Then we won't miss. Sarah's voice carried absolute conviction. Custodian, begin the forge's transformation sequence. It's time to show everyone what this facility was truly built for. The entire structure shuddered as ancient mechanisms activated. Walls flowed like quicksilver, vast sections detaching and reconfiguring themselves. The transformation they had been preparing for was beginning, but not in the way their ancestors had designed. All operators, synchronize. Sarah commanded through the neural network. Phase 1 initiating. The stellar forge broke apart, its components spreading out in a precise geometric pattern. But instead of forming the defensive network they had trained for, it was becoming something else. A vast lattice of interconnected nodes, each one capable of manipulating the fundamental forces of reality. Through the neural link, Sarah felt the strain on the operators' minds as they helped guide the transformation. Some faltered, their consciousness flickering under the load, but others rushed to support them. The human mind proved more adaptable than even their ancestors had imagined. Mars stations reporting visual contact. Torres announced. The void is spreading through the asteroid belt. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the power of the transformed forge humming through her enhanced nervous system. Then it's time. All operators, prepare for final synchronization. We're about to remind the universe why humanity survived when our ancestors fled. The void between Mars and Jupiter rippled with malevolent purpose as the devourers approached, their ancient hunger focused on the world that had dared to reawaken its forgotten legacy. But humanity was done running from the darkness. 300 minds joined as one, channeling power that could reshape worlds. The stellar forge's lattice began to glow, each node amplifying the next in a cascade of pure energy. Sarah felt the pressure building in her mind, tasting copper as blood trickled from her nose. On my mark, she commanded, her enhanced senses calculating the perfect moment to strike. The void grew closer, its darkness reaching out with tendrils of anti-light. In the command sphere, Commander Torres gripped his console, watching the enemy approach. Dr. Tanaka's hands flew across her controls, making final adjustments to their experimental weapon. The custodian's presence hummed through their systems, ready to channel power in ways its creators had never imagined. The fate of Earth, of humanity itself, would be decided in the next few moments. Sarah smiled grimly as she prepared to give the order that would change everything. For Earth, she whispered, for our past and our future. The void between Mars and Jupiter churned with impossible darkness as Sarah gave the command. All operators, execute primary sequence. Now. The transformed stellar forge blazed to life, its lattice of interconnected nodes burning like a new constellation. 300 enhanced minds worked in perfect harmony, channeling power that could reshape worlds. The fabric of space-time itself began to ripple as their combined will focused on a single point. Energy readings are off the scale, Yuki reported, her enhanced senses struggling to process the data. The space-time distortions are intensifying. Through the neural network, Sarah felt the strain on the operators. Some were already bleeding from their noses and ears, but none wavered. They had trained for this moment, pushing themselves beyond normal human limits. Now, they would find out if it was enough. The Devourers sensed the trap too late. The void tried to pull back, its tendrils of anti-light recoiling from the forge's energy field. But humanity had learned from 50,000 years of running. This time, they had prepared the battlefield. Secondary sequence, engage. Sarah commanded. The lattice shifted, its nodes realigning into a new pattern. Each point of light began pulsing in a precise rhythm, creating waves of stabilized space-time that crashed against the void like breakers against a dark shore. "It's working," the custodian observed, its artificial consciousness monitoring every aspect of their desperate gamut. The Devourers cannot maintain their consumption field within the stabilized space. Commander Torres watched the tactical display as sections of the void began to collapse. "They're trying to adapt. Look at those energy patterns. They're attempting to match our frequency." "Not this time," Sarah growled. Through the neural link, she reached out to all the operators. "Everyone, prepare for maximum output. We're not just going to trap them. We're going to show them why humanity was worth fearing in the first place." The strain on their enhanced minds intensified as they pushed the forge beyond its designed limits. Sarah felt blood running from her eyes now, but she refused to relent. The lives of 8 billion people depended on their success. "Final sequence authorized," she declared. "Custodian, initiate the resonance cascade." "Warning," the AI announced. This level of power could permanently damage the neural network and the operators connected to it. "We know the risks," Sarah replied. "Do it." The forge's lattice began to pulse with increasing intensity. Each node amplified the next in an exponential cascade of energy. The stabilized space-time field wasn't just containing the void now. It was compressing it, forcing the Devourers into an ever-shrinking bubble of reality. Through the neural network, Sarah sensed operators beginning to fall unconscious, their enhanced minds unable to handle the strain. But as each one faltered, others stepped up, redistributing the load. The human capacity for adaptation, for pushing beyond supposed limits, proved greater than even their ancestors had imagined. "Void collapse at 60%, Yuki reported, her voice strained but triumphant. "They're trying to break free, but the field is holding." The tactical display showed the truth of her words. The darkness that had consumed countless civilizations was being crushed by human willpower and ingenuity, transformed into something new by the very technology it had sought to devour. "What's happening to them?" Torres asked, watching as the void compressed further. "We're not destroying them," Sarah explained through gritted teeth. "We're changing them. The forge doesn't just break things down, it rebuilds them. We're turning their own consumed energy against them, forcing them to experience the one thing they never could before: creation instead of consumption." The void pulsed one final time, a silent scream of defiance against its transformation. Then, with a flash of light that briefly outshone Mars itself, it collapsed into a single point of intense brilliance. "Energy readings stabilizing," the custodian announced. "The void, it's gone." In its place, the tactical display zoomed in on where the Devourers had been. There, floating in the space between Mars and Jupiter, was a sphere of pure crystal, no larger than a beach ball. Within it, patterns of light danced in endless permutations, the consumed energy of ancient civilizations, transformed into something beautiful rather than destructive. "We did it," Yuki whispered, tears mixing with the blood on her cheeks. "We actually did it." Sarah felt the neural network humming with exhausted triumph as the operators began to disengage. Many would need medical attention, and all would carry the scars of this battle for the rest of their lives. But they had faced humanity's ancient nightmare and emerged victorious. "The other Devourer fleets will have sensed this," the custodian warned. "They will come to investigate, perhaps to seek revenge." "Let them come," Sarah replied, her enhanced eyes glowing with determined purpose. We're not hiding anymore. Humanity remembers what it once was, and we've proven we can be even more than our ancestors. The transformed stellar forge began to reconfigure itself once more, its lattice collapsing back into a more compact form. But it would never return to its dormant state. Like humanity itself, it had evolved into something new, a symbol of their species' potential to face any challenge, to overcome any obstacle. Commander Torres looked out at the starfield, where the crystal sphere containing the transformed devourers continued to pulse with its mesmerizing light. What do we do with that? Sarah smiled, despite her exhaustion. We study it, we learn from it, and we use that knowledge to prepare for whatever comes next. The universe threw its worst at us, and we turned it into art. That's what humanity does. We don't just survive, we transform. We create. As the operators began their well-earned rest, Sarah's enhanced senses detected something new. Signals from deep space, far beyond their solar system. Other civilizations had witnessed their victory. Humanity's return to the galactic stage had been announced not with conquest or destruction, but with an act of transformation that defied the very laws of nature. The long night of humanity's exile was over. The children of Earth had reclaimed their heritage and proven themselves worthy of it. And somewhere out there, Sarah knew, their ancient ancestors were watching with pride as their descendants took their first steps into a future filled with unlimited potential. The stars beckoned, not as points of light to hide between, but as destinations to explore. Humanity was ready to write the next chapter of its story, not as refugees fleeing the darkness, but as pioneers bringing light to the shadows between stars.